Psychologists, when were you genuinely scared of a patient?
Story number 1. Therapist in training and my tutor, who is a childhood, abuse and trauma specialist, tells some horror stories. The one that stood out for this question was a guy in his mid-40s who had lived most of his life with extreme paranoia that his parents were sending people to get information from him to blackmail him with. This guy was extremely unstable and was legally obligated to go to therapy after committing some petty theft because he believed his parents were tracking his money. Anyway, he'd been going for about 6 weeks, and he began to talk about a plan for the future. He was kind of vague, but said he had worked out a way to break free from his childhood and move forward. My tutor was apprehensive, but hopeful. He had been making good progress in the previous sessions. Fast forward a week, and this guy is back again. He's noticeably agitated and carrying a large sports bag. My tutor remarks that she's pleased to see him and likes his new bag. He breaks down. He confesses that he has a machete in the bag and had planned to kill everyone from his old life, starting with his therapist, so he could be free from his past, but she was very nice and would be hard to kill. My tutor politely excused herself and called the police. The guy was very compliant. He'd pretty much given up at that point, but the police confirmed he did indeed have a large machete in his bag, and his car was full of bin bags. She said that was the only time she felt she was close to dying, and says the morale of the story is to treat all your clients well because you never know who's plotting your murder. Story number 2. Worked in a mental health facility for children for 6 months. Saddest 6 months of my life. Top 3 shocking things that happened were severely schizophrenic 16-year-old teenage boy who was around 5 feet tall, 90 pounds, would get put into a straitjacket during one of his episodes, and he could physically take down the 6 feet 3 inches, 230 pounds male tech while being in a straitjacket. He would speak in voices that almost sounded demonic while doing it. It was horrifying. Severely schizophrenic 17-year-old girl would hide in a corner, wait till her targeted worker would walk by, stick her hands down the front of her pants into her vagina, grab a handful of period blood, and smack us across the face with the blood. She did this to me more than once, and I had to go to the hospital more than once during work hours to get tested, especially when the blood would get close to our mouths and eyes. Very sweet, but very non-verbal. 13-year-old boy would masturbate constantly. Pants down, penis out, masturbating all day, all night, in front of everyone and anyone. He had elephantiasis of his penis and part of one of his legs, so these events were not only disturbing and inappropriate, there was literally a practical problem with him taking his 1.5-foot-long penis out of his pants. It seriously took 2 people to pack it back in, and then he would drop his pants and take it out all over again. Story number 3. I'm a farm worker. The grandson of the guy I worked for was off the charts. Crazy. The grandparents couldn't control him. They bought him a .22 rifle. It had a trigger lock. They gave him the key and some ammunition. I locked it away because he was 6 years old. He threatened to shoot me, so I put him in timeout. He shit on the floor and laughed like a crazy asshole. I came to find out it was his sister's rifle. I took away because a few hours later he came outside with his rifle trigger lock off-bolt in and ammunition in his pocket to kill me for taking away his sister's gun. Every day I had to deal with something like this. I have seen other workers chasing this 6-year-old kid with hammers. He was batshit crazy. I have many stories about that year. I warned him to stop playing on the roof of a tractor. He would get hurt, and I am not there to watch that bullshit. He starts to get down and just seemed to flop down on purpose. Landed stomach first on the back of the tractor. It would have hurt so bad. He cried for about 20 seconds, then cackled with laughter. He probably broke ribs, and I saw massive bruises on his stomach when he lifted his shirt to check for cuts. I watched him kill baby chickens by first saying how cute and petting them, then standing on them. He tortured the farm dog to the point. It growled when he went near, and one point I actually had to stop the dog from killing him. It had him by the back of the neck and was chomping down. He was crying, then burst into laughter. I can't speak enough about this kid to convey the frustration he would cause. He scared me, and I was on a farm where aggressive Black Angus bulls were a daily thing. Everyone hated that kid, and I am relieved I'm not around him anymore. He's coming your way, psychologists. Story number 4. I used to work in an inpatient residential treatment facility for sexually reactive adolescents, or in other words, juvenile sex offenders. I will say the broad majority of the kids
Were kids who had experienced some severe trauma and as a result, reoffended on others. While they had some pretty severe behavioral and emotional issues, I could say that by and large they were mostly good kids. They were kids who needed therapeutic intervention, re-education with learning healthy boundaries and coping skills, self-soothing and working through their traumas and all that jazz. I'm happy to say that many of them completed their treatment and discharged successfully. I've come across a few later down the years. Even met one in a deli by random chance who said he was just about to finish community college and then transfer to a 4-year state school to get his bachelor's in psychology. I felt hella proud about that one. But there was a very small handful that I think were true predators, truly sick and twisted individuals who truly were void of any empathy. I'm talking serious manipulation and preying on more vulnerable people for any kind of sexual gratification. Extreme sociopathy, or for you technical folks, conduct disorder, ASPD, NPD, and OD and that sort. One was discharged and immediately sought more children to offend. He is thankfully in prison now. Another got incarcerated again for some other crimes. Truthfully, my time at that place kind of fucked with my head and assumptions about human behavior. While I think rehabilitation is the way our prison system really needs to lean towards, I also think there are some people who are beyond any kind of rehabilitation and need to be kept away from the public. Story #6. I used to work in a hospital that didn't give a shit about employee security. Interestingly, not even psych. It was an ortho facility where we offered psych treatment as well. Sexual harassment was a huge issue. I was threatened by a patient who didn't like the assessment we made about his ability to work. I had a group of men in a relaxation therapy setting there egg each other on in escalating sexual harassment. This was a room in the last corner of the basement. Several warnings to be quiet and not linger outside, so there would be peace and quiet for relaxation. It got to a point where all of us doing this had our phones in hand the entire time and would jump up, open the door, and turn on the light immediately afterwards. There were a few instances where I was genuinely terrified that I would be raped. Other employees had experienced assaults before. Those people were not mentally ill, though. We're talking some depression, perhaps, but mostly pain conditions, loss of their sense of masculinity when they became physically impaired. My experience with people in psych settings has been way better. I have had patients that were dangerous or had been previously harming others. When they are desperate enough to seek help, they don't usually threaten the help. I generally experience them being very grateful and often careful not to scare me.